One aspect of the Turok series we haven't really talked about on this channel is the multiplayer. While it never reached quite the same heights as GoldenEye, Turok has had quite a bit of success in this department. Turok 2 in particular is an extremely fun Nintendo 64 party game. But early in development, Acclaim wasn't sure if the feature was going to make the cut. So in the meantime, they began work on a standalone multiplayer spin-off. Launching between the releases of the second and third installments, Turok Rage Wars often gets lost in the shuffle. I can tell you right now, if you can get together a group of friends for a split-screen game night, this is a must-own title. But what if you can't convince anyone to play with you? Well, Turok has you covered. Kind of. For this video, I'll be focusing on the single-player experience, while still highlighting general gameplay observations that apply to the package as a whole. So, how does it work? Well, you start with a choice of 4 characters, each with an extremely limited pool of weapons. The goal is to move through the fighting game style mission tree, completing arena battles against bots. Most of the time you'll be asked to score a set number of kills with limited respawns, but sometimes the game mixes things up by adding a teammate or an objective, such as capturing flags or winning rounds in frag tag. These other modes are well designed and play fine against human players with functioning brains. But unfortunately, the AI just isn't up to the task. In Capture the Flag, for example, all you need to do is figure out the quickest route and then run 5 laps. Usually my opponents won't even try to kill me, and even if they do grab the flag, there's no sense in chasing them down. It doesn't matter if they score points, as long as I don't die. And like I said, frag tag is similarly broken. For those unfamiliar, in this mode a player is randomly selected to assume the form of a defenseless monkey, dinosaur, or chicken. Their goal is to make it to the glowing pad without dying, while the other players try to kill them for bonus points. In a competitive environment against humans, you'll be fighting each other to get to the monkey. But against bots, I can just wait near the pad, strafing a bit to avoid half-hearted gunfire, and waste the monkey or chicken as it takes basically the same route every time. I see why these modes seemed like a good idea to include, since the structure of the game is already inherently repetitive, but honestly, standard deathmatches are way more fun, even with the crappy AI. In addition to the 3 main styles of gameplay, there are also 4 boss encounters. Some of the starting characters are meant to ease you into the game, so you might not have to fight all of them every time, but in the grand scheme of things, this distinction hardly matters. The fact is, if you plan on clearing all of the trials and unlocking everything the game has to offer, you'll be fighting these guys a lot. The first major opponent, whom you'll quickly come to hate, is Bastille. The concept here is super basic. Depleting his energy shield drops him to his knees, giving you a short window to inflict permanent damage before his defenses return. Depending on your character and progress, your available weapons will fluctuate in effectiveness, making some fights against Bastille harder or longer than others. The big thing to avoid is prolonged engagement. Bastille hits hard and he'll tear you to shreds if you don't duck away after a few seconds. So really, the best strategy is to chip away at him while keeping your ammo and health topped up. Really, you'll probably spend more time running in circles than actually fighting him. The next boss is Syrah. There's nothing really special about her except that she's got a Perlin bodyguard. This guy is a big target and pretty easy to chew through. He'll respawn, so you'll probably need to kill him twice during the course of the fight, but I've literally never died here, so it's almost not worth talking about. Next is Symbiote. This is probably the guy you'll face the least, since he only appears in the longest and most complex tournament trees, which, we'll get to that later. As for the actual fight, it's a bit of a guessing game. The area is filled with a number of symbiote hosts, but only the leader will take damage, so just watch that health bar, and when it starts to go down, that means it's time to take out the big guns. The last boss is always Tall Set, the hero of Turok Dinosaur Hunter and Turok Evolution. He's got cool armor, and thematically he's a great pick for this role. But in terms of gameplay, he's just a beefed up bot. He'll move around the map the same way, using the same kinds of weapons. The only difference is that he has phases. After dealing sufficient damage, Tall Set will teleport away, forcing you to kill a few random enemies before he returns. Again, not super complicated, but the fact that it's Tall Set combined with the neat temple arena makes the battle suitably climactic, at least for a while. That's the real sticking point here. The game's progression is based entirely around unlocking characters and clearing their respective trials. The difficulty fluctuates a bit, and you'll gain new weapons and attachments, which is rewarding, but this isn't something you can just sit down and burn through in an afternoon. Rage Wars is best enjoyed in short bursts, and by playing it over a longer period of time, it probably won't outstay its welcome. Moving along, let's talk about the mission tree. I likened it to a fighting game tournament bracket for the sake of simplicity, but maybe that's a bit misleading. The different branching nodes will allow you to choose your path to circumvent various encounters, and in some cases you can get to Tall Set pretty quickly. The trade-off is you won't earn as many bonuses. These include mystical talismans that will give you more lives and increase your ammo carrying capacity, a slew of new weapons and attachments, and also special tokens which will unlock minigames. For all of us completionists, the concept is addicting, but maybe not enough to combat the monotony. There's also the unintended side effect of becoming too strong. As a result, the difficulty curve is inverted. You'll start with 1 or 2 lives to complete early challenges, but by the end you might be pushing double digits. It's also important to note that any problems with repetition stem from completing the same kinds of activities against not so great AI. The core gameplay is actually quite good and does a lot to make the experience more fun than it probably should be. This is the Turok 2 engine after all. It's got a solid feel, and the combination of sound design, gunplay, and gore make each hit extremely visceral and satisfying. The arsenal is also extremely solid. The punchy Mag 60 feels every bit as good as it did in Turok 2, while the shotgun and plasma rifles are closer to their original Dinosaur Hunter versions. I love the design of these guns, so no complaints there. And in addition to returning weapons, Rage Wars features a few new ones. There's the Inflator, which does exactly as it says, comically expanding the enemy's body until it pops. And if you run out of ammo before finishing the kill, well, that just leaves you with a bigger target. Or maybe you'd rather thin your enemies out with the Emancipator. The effect isn't quite as obvious or funny, but it does seem to be the more efficient killer. Unfortunately, some of the other new weapons, such as the freeze and flare guns, don't make as much of an impact. The freeze gun was especially disappointing. I like that it slows enemies down, but the time to kill is just too long, and the effect wears off almost as soon as you switch to something else. In addition to weapons and ammunition, you'll also find equipment scattered around the arenas. The sentry guns and mines can be used to fortify strategic positions, or if you can figure out where teleporters lead, you can leave unsuspecting bots a nasty surprise. Another notable pickup you might come across is the Cerebral Bore, which allows you to shoot homing drills at enemies for one-shot kills. If you've ever played any of the mainline Turok games, you'll know how much fun this can be. Oh, and don't forget to keep your eyes out for power cores. These glowing pickups will give you temporary buffs. You can gain regenerating health, the ability to slow your opponents, invisibility, and much more. There are over a dozen different possibilities, and while they're all worth grabbing, the one you really want is called Massive Damage. With this power core, your time to kill jumps to Call of Duty levels. It's way overpowered, but really, who's complaining? In terms of maps, Rage Wars features close to 40 individual arenas. Most are pretty basic, featuring all the ramps, catwalks, and winding corridors you've come to expect from early first-person shooters. Still, they're not without some fun quirks. The ones that play with gravity-defying water are especially interesting. And I'm not just saying that because swimming enemies make easy targets. None of these maps are all-time classics, but I didn't dread any of them either. They suit the game well, even if they never blew me away. The same can be said about the graphics. The environments are mostly dark and muddy, which is fine for the mature tone, but I think more could have been done in this department. The Turok games, even up to this point, have featured so many rich environments that I'm surprised there aren't any jungle or cliff levels. Why not reuse some assets from the Treetop Village or the Ancient City? Still keep the arenas closed in as the genre demands, but maybe open up the skybox a bit, to let some fresh air in. As for character models, they're detailed and easy to read. Some are maybe too large, which gives them a terrible disadvantage, and their animations aren't the greatest, but none of this is surprising given the time the game was made. The hardware has its limitations, obviously, and Rage Wars was released before shooters became obsessed with hyper-competitive balance settings. That said, I can't mention the character models without complaining about their hands. And no, I'm not nitpicking. For my first trial, I began with Turok, as anyone would. After that, I played Adon, and to my surprise, she had the same manly hands. I assumed this was a cost-cutting measure for human characters, and didn't think about it again until I moved on to the Mantid Soldier. Guess what? Human hands. Everyone has Turok's hands, with two exceptions, the Velociraptor and the Mantid Mites. I guess it would look pretty weird with two man hands reaching forward, flailing at enemies. Anyway, I get why they did this, but it really does feel lazy. The last thing I want to complain about are the controls. Yes, I know I said the game felt good, and that's true, but I had to jump through quite a few hoops to get there. Back when the N64 was new and Turok was my only first-person shooter, I had zero issues with the inverted stick. But after years of Xbox, my muscle memory is not so easily unwired. This wouldn't be a problem except the game doesn't feature a toggle. You either play inverted or you load up an emulator and remap the controls. Unlike the other Turok games, I'm not really holding out hope for a Night Dive Studios remaster. But if it did happen, a simple analog checkbox would go a long way. So yeah, as long as you're okay with the controls, Turok Rage Wars offers a lot of fun in short sessions. Going in, I was a little worried there'd be a lack of content, but even for the solo player, it provides a fair amount of value. The limited AI holds it back from its true potential, but if you see it cheap and want a little Turok action, you really can't go wrong.